Welcome to OState Daily. Casey Porter here. So glad that you decided to tune in. And we are going to talk about another disappointing Saturday. Oklahoma State at Fort Worth went and dropped to the TCU Horned Frogs. Probably not going to get into just an absolute ton of the talk of how the actual game went, just simply because it was a pretty ugly game as far as that game goes. But we are going to kind of talk about some of the things that surround the situation, surround the game last night. We will talk about the game. We'll talk about anything that you want, no doubt about that. But just kind of some of the aspects of the program at this point, where it's at. Mike Gundy's comments on Monday as we dive into that. I'll be honest with you. I'm kind of past the frustration, maybe the anger, all of that stage. I'm kind of to the point now of just realizing that we're not very good. That, to be honest with you, we haven't recruited very well. We don't have a roster full of players that have the foot speed to be able to hang with a team like TCU, even though TCU was not very good on defense. We don't have the depth. We don't have really even the playmakers. So, I was texting with some buddies last night, and my comment to the offense of Oklahoma State is that this Mike Gundy offense, and yes, we can want Casey Dunn gone, whatever. I think Mike Yursich was a puppet of Mike Gundy. Sean Gleason didn't last very long. I know he ended up going to Rutgers. I think he got fired there. But Mike Gundy says all the time that we are running the OSU offense, which I firmly believe. It's got some RPO to it. We see the slant. We see the mesh routes. We see the inside zone. See a little bit of counter, a little bit of zone away type stuff. But it's pretty. I mean, we see some of the bubbles and it's not reinventing the wheel. The OSU offense does not reinvent the wheel at all. It's basically the exact same offense that everybody else runs. We do it out of 3-by-1. We do it out of 12 personnel, which is one running back, two tight ends. We do it out of 21 personnel with a fullback and a tight end. So, I mean, it's not reinventing the wheel. So, kind of what my point was and still is about this OSU offense is it's not very sophisticated. It's not something that, is going to, like a Lincoln Riley type offense. What made him so good is when he was a kid, he was really good at math. And so he would do the math really fast, and then he would figure out, like with his GT counter plays, he would figure out a way each week to make the math work to where they could run their 4 or 5 different concepts every week. They weren't different concepts. They were just set up differently. Like, for instance, if the backside 9-tech is chasing the pullers and killing the mesh point, then the tackle on the backside would just base block and pick up that 9-tech, and then you would pull an H-back or the center instead. So you still have 2 pullers, and then you would have that 9-tech accounted for. So I say all that to say, one thing that he is great at is figuring out how to make the math work to get back to the concepts that he runs every single week. So for OSU, the offense for me isn't real sophisticated, and I say that to say what makes it work and what has made it work over the years is, A, you need the Marcel Aitman, the Tylan Wallace, the Des Bryant, the Justin Blackman, all of those guys that can go up and high point of football. Yes, Rashad Owens is big. Yes, Des Stribling is a really good player. Obviously, Brennan Presley is amazing. He's probably going to be in the Ring of Honor someday. He just entered the 5,000 all-purpose yards club with a club of Terry Miller, who I just released his interview this week. What an honor it was to get to speak with him. Thurman Thomas, Barry Sanders. So Brennan Presley is not good. He's elite. He is Ring of Honor elite. So, yes, he is awesome, but he's not a jump ball guy, right? And then he's also not your guy that stretches the field. So the 2 things that Oklahoma State needs in the pass game is they need a jump ball receiver that usually you put to the boundary. Like you see that 3-by-1 set, you'll put the 3 receivers to the field. A lot of times Oklahoma State puts them to the boundary. so they can get that single matchup with all the field to work with, the width. I love it when they do that. And then you just on a third, say an 8 or 9, you just lob up a fade pass, and Marcel Aitman or Tylan Wallace or Dez Bryant or Adarius Bowman or whoever it may be just jumps up and high points the ball and picks up a first down on a very unsophisticated play. Or how many times have we seen Oklahoma State do that, and you draw a penalty flag and you move the chains via that way. So one, for Mike Gundy's offense to work, you need a jump ball receiver to move the chains, and then you need the James Washington type of guy that can blow the doors off and knock the top off and go deep on that. You know, that they call that dig route, that double in route. You'll see that inside receiver, which would be like Brennan Presley. He'll take the safety with him, and then also, you know, like maybe a linebacker. And then the quarterback reads which player the safety drives on. If he drives on the underneath slant, then he throw it deep. If you need an example of how that dig route works, go back to the game where Oklahoma State played Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh several years ago and scored, oh my God, I don't know how many points. They kept running that double in route, double deep post. They call it the dig route. And James Washington and everybody else was absolutely wide open. So this Oklahoma State offense needs a jump ball receiver to move the chains. It needs a deep threat to give it chunk plays. We see that this offense without the chunk plays is not sophisticated enough. Even on our great years where we've scored a whole ton of points, we've seen a lot of 3 and outs because the offense itself wasn't sophisticated enough through scheme to move the ball methodically down the field. To put points on the board, it needs a jump ball guy, a guy that can take the top off on that deep dig route. And then also in the running game, this running game for Oklahoma State under Mike Gundy, since he's been here, needs one of two things. It either needs a Kendall Hunter, Dantrell Savage, a Justice Hill, a Jalen Warren type of scat back, jitterbug type back that can make that linebacker miss and then burst into the second level. So what we're seeing this year is Ollie Gordon's just not making anybody miss, right? I mean, that one guy that is unaccounted for, that is always unaccounted for, is able to take down Ollie Gordon, whether it be behind the line of scrimmage or if the offensive line blocks, say, a 3-yard gain, he's getting exactly 3 yards because he's not making anybody miss. So this offense and this running game in particular needs a running back that can either make somebody miss and or it needs a running back that can outrun the defense and create chunk plays, like a Tatum Bell, like a Chuba Hubbard, something like that. Either one. You either need a running back that can, but the running backs like a Chris Carson, I know he had success, but it took him forever to have success at OSU, like a Desmond Rowland. Even what we're seeing with Ollie Gordon this year, guys that don't particularly make defenders miss, and then they also don't have the speed to blow the top off and create chunk plays. Those are the types of offenses that tend to really get mired down and slowed down into 3 and outs and situations like that. So I think that's what we're seeing a lot with OSU this year is just the combination of the skill sets doesn't match the sophistication of the offense because you don't really have that jump ball receiver. At least we haven't seen it this year. We haven't seen any receiver as great as Brennan Presley is blow the top off. We haven't seen Ollie Gordon make anybody miss. And we haven't seen him have the speed, maybe a couple times BYU, I guess, but, you know, the speed to blow the doors off to create chunk plays. Mike Gundy's offenses have to create chunk plays to survive. It's not, I'm going to say it again, it's not sophisticated enough to go first down by first down by first down by first down and play slow and huddle up and do the things that they're doing this year unless they have a chain-moving jump ball guy. Now, Brennan Presley has been a pretty good chain mover. I think our tight ends, I think Rashad Owens could be that chain mover, but it just simply has not happened this year. So we're going to have to wait and see if that – well, obviously not necessarily wait and see, but we will see if Oklahoma State can, moving into the future, figure out a way to get those things going. So, hey, we have a great crowd logging in. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. A bunch of people already. Hey, Eric Jones, EJ Farm D, thank you so much. So time to fire Gundy. It may be. I don't know that he has the desire to upgrade recruiting coaching. He seems resistant to change much, including just starting Smith at quarterback. Okay, so I'll say this, and I'm sure most of the fans out there will disagree with me. I still think Mike Gundy has earned by leaps and bounds the ability to figure this out. He said a couple of times himself that they have a plan in place. It's not bearing fruit. You're not seeing it on the field this year. But I think there are no answers to what the depth is this year. I think when he says we have a plan moving forward, that plan is, here's what's costing us. We need to go find a jump ball receiver. We need to find a receiver that can blow the top off. We need to find a running back that can make people miss in the backfield. And then we need to figure out something on defense, right? I mean, here's what I think happened on defense, and I don't have any inside information, but I would bet that I'm right. So you go get this young whippersnapper that runs an odd stack defense. You have all of these experienced coaches, we'll use that term, at Oklahoma State. First of all, when you bring in a young guy from a Division II program to be the boss over a bunch of experienced guys that have coached in a lot bigger situations, number one, ego is going to play a part in this. And for one, it's going to be very difficult for those experienced guys to work underneath somebody with much less experience, for number one. And then for number two, it's going to be even more infinitely difficult for this young guy to come in and convince these more experienced coaches that what his defense is better than what they have always done, especially whenever you have guys that have coached in a defense under Jim Knowles that were dominant, and a great defense. And so imagine being a young D2 guy coming in and trying to convince all of these experienced coaches at Oklahoma State that not only do they need to listen to him because he now is their boss, but they also need to change, and the old dog new tricks type of thing. They have to change their ways and learn an entirely new style of defense from a schematical perspective. That was the job that Brian Nardo was tasked to do. Not an easy thing to do, right? I think he did a pretty good job solving the puzzle for the most part last year. There was enough complimentary football to where it felt like as the game went on, Oklahoma State was like an anaconda snake. As Brian Nardo started figuring things out, it's like Oklahoma State just slowly squeezed the life out of all their opponents last year for the most part, and because of that, they won a lot of close games. So now you enter this year, and you're starting to see more tight ends, you're starting to see more unbalanced sets, you're starting to see more fullbacks, and now you have an entire staff filled full of 40 front coaches that have been 40 front coaches their entire career, and at times have had massive success with the 40 front. And now you're sitting around and having the conversation that, how in the world are we going to run a 30 front if teams start putting tight ends and fullbacks out there? Well, it's very simple. I mean, a 30 front, that 3-3-5 basically is a 9-man box because you have 3 linebackers and you have 3 safeties that can layer your 3 down linemen and make it basically a 9-man box at that point. That's the basic understanding of how it works. So in the offseason, you're thinking, well, we're getting heavier sets, so we need to move to a 4-2-5. So now basically what you have is, in my opinion, you have a bunch of assistants and a head coach that have trumped the defensive coordinator, okay? They're going to run the defense that they want to run. Now, instead of everybody having to run the defense the defensive coordinator brought in, the defensive coordinator is having to run the defense that everybody else wants, which is the 4-2-5. And so instead of having the 3-high type of rotating post-inverted zones, like, for instance, you could have a quarters coverage, and if you have a fast flow and outside play to one side, you have like a Trey Rucker come down and fit the run, and then a Kendall Daniels gets over the top, and eventually you started in a cover 4 quarters coverage, but as the play rotated and you had a run play, one safety goes to fit the run. Now you have post inverted and rotated into a cover 3. So instead of having all of those exotic type coverages that have really exotic type blitzes in front of them, our blitz packages were awesome last year. Now you're resorted, for some reason, to playing man coverage on the back. It's predictable. Everybody knows what's coming. And now all you're seeing is rub routes. You're seeing pick routes. You're seeing other teams run our secondary off. Quarterbacks scrambling off of that. You're hearing week after week how our defensive line is getting out of the rush lanes. Also, you're seeing backs flare out to get rid of linebackers. You're seeing blitzes that don't get home. And because of that, there's this huge gap between the defensive line and the secondary that has their backs turned to the quarterback. And that all happened because you went and hired a 3-3-5 defensive coordinator, decided to change your defense in the offseason, and now you're playing a defense that just isn't effective whatsoever. And then you combine that with the fact that you lose Xavier Benson, which was a big loss. You lose DJ McKinney, which was a big loss, right? And then you lose Nick Martin. Then you lose Colin Oliver. And all of a sudden, you're just not nearly as good. And then here's the snowball part of it. First of all, you're not very good to begin with, as we saw in the Arkansas game, even when you were healthy, right? But the biggest issue is that from that point on, as you started losing people to injury, it's not that you were good to begin with and all of a sudden you're bad after the injuries. It's that now you don't even have the depth really to get better in practice. I mean, you just don't. I mean, you can't live tackle. You can't tackle to the ground because, hey, Obi Ezigbo, I love what he's done, but what happens if we lose him, right? And we did see a bunch of freshmen. I'm going to get into all the young guys that played in last night's game. So that's kind of been the snowball of the way the defenses worked. And to me, the downfall of the defense, the snowball of the offense, again, just to kind of give you the cliff notes. No jump ball guy to move the chains on the fade passes on third down. Nobody to take the top off as far as a receiver goes. And then no running back to make anybody miss and or to create chunk plays by outrunning the defense. And then because of that, you're taking a quarterback that was a lifetime backup, a guy that was supposed to be a Band-Aid, a guy that's supposed to be a game manager, and you're asking him to deal with all of these issues that aren't fitting. You're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole with a quarterback that is absolutely not capable of doing that. Alan Bowman is capable of being okay if you had every element that I mentioned. If you had the jump ball guy where he could just lob it up. If you had the deep ball guy where he could just throw it to a spot, let him run underneath it like James Washington used to do. If you had a running back that could create chunk plays and go running for a 70-yard touchdown, or a running back that even if a particular play is not blocked up properly, could make the first guy miss, bounce out, and get 6 yards. Alan Bowman could survive and be serviceable if all of those parameters were met. If any of those parameters aren't there, he's not equipped, he's not good enough. He just isn't the guy to get you past those situations, like a Spencer Sanders or even a Taylor Cornelius, or, Mason Rudolph had that. He had the jump ball guy and the guy to take the top off. And then we also saw he also had the running back to do it with, right? And so Alan Bowman can barely be serviceable with all of those elements. You take all of those elements away, plus an offensive line that's not blocking very well, and it becomes a situation to where just physically he's not equipped to handle the situation. And then you move on to Garrett Rangel, which was going to be a good thing. He looked really good at BYU. Then he gets hurt. Zane Flores has surgery. There's a long story behind that. Oklahoma State will eventually release that story. I do know the story behind it. It's not my place to tell the story. I think it'll eventually come out, and it will make sense to everybody. So then you lose the two guys that really would be probably the strongest consideration to be your starters next year. Now you're looking at a true freshman who has been basically the scout team guy. He has not even been running your plays, okay? He's been running the scout team plays the entire year. We can see his physique. You've already had two guys get injured. You already had Garrett Rangel get injured in a game. Malaliaki Smith, we see his frame right now is not built to withstand much punishment at the Division I level at this point. I mean, he just couldn't take a whole lot. So now, I mean, you're kind of forced to play Alan Bowman. I think Smith should have came in probably to start the second half, but I don't think you can just turn the reins over to him right now just because I don't think he's physically ready to go out and take the punishment that he would get. I'm telling you, he's going to get blitzed. He's going to get hit. But, hey, that's to each their own. But I'll say this. So I know you're going to come at me with, well, I think Malaliaki Smith should have played sooner. I'm not going to disagree with you on that. I think he should have played the entire second half. I don't have any problems with Alan Bowman playing the first half because of all the issues that I just brought up as far as him being a scout team quarterback and then physically just not having the girth right now to me to be able to handle the situation. I think some version of Alan Bowman plus an Ollie Cat plus Malaliaki Smith is the best way to go at this point. Having said that, I will give Oklahoma State coaches credit. Last night, they played 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, let me go and get right here and let me get the numbers that I actually had written down. So let's see. Give me just a second here. Oklahoma State played 13 freshmen. This is off the participation list, and maybe I overlooked one or two. I don't think I did. I looked it over and looked and overlooked it, relooked it like 3 or 4 different times. But by my count, OSU played 13 freshmen last night and 6 sophomores, and that does not include Dylan Smith. Okay, I did not see him on the game log, and I'm not going to go back and look at every play. So if he did play, that would add a 7th sophomore there, right? Okay, so whether you believe that Malaliaki Smith should have came in sooner or not, I think we have to agree that 13 freshmen and 6 sophomores is a pretty good attempt at a youth movement for Oklahoma State last night. So I don't have a problem with the philosophy of the types of players and who to play when and that kind of thing that was employed last night. I think the Oklahoma State coaches did a good job of making the youth movement move last night. Now, having said that, the bowl game streak is over, so there is absolutely nothing to lose by playing these young guys other than here's what you actually have to lose. If you put these guys on film, especially Malaliaki Smith, if you put a whole lot of film out there, there's a good chance that Zane Flores, Garrett Rangel come back totally healthy next year, and Garrett Rangel's QB number 1, and then you also might go get a transfer portal guy, okay? So there's a let's just say there's a good chance that Malaliaki Smith is not the starter next year. There is a chance that he's not even the backup. There's a chance that he's not even the 3rd string if you go get a transfer portal guy, right? And so if you put film out on Malaliaki Smith, that gives all of these other schools film to evaluate him in Division I football games against Texas Tech and Colorado if you turn the last 2 games over to him. I promise you, other teams will use that film to evaluate whether they want him or not. And they will be able to sell him on the fact that Garrett Rangel is coming back, Zane Flores is coming back, Oklahoma State's getting a transfer portal guy. And so you might be cutting your nose off to spite your face by actually playing Malaliaki Smith because you're giving him experience for somebody else to gain the benefit of after they come grab him out of the transfer portal, because I don't think you certainly can't guarantee him going into the spring that he is the clear-cut starter, right? So, I mean, he's from Sacramento, California. He's from a great high school, Junipero Serra there. Barry Bonds is from there. Obviously, Tom Brady, one of the guys that I talked to quite a bit on my Dodgers site, who was the starting center fielder for the Dodgers 2 years ago. James Outman is from that high school. So I know that Coach Walsh there, the football coach there, it's amazing the job they do there. But I mean, he's a long ways away from here is where he grew up. So there's going to be every school that needs a talented quarterback. They're going to look at this film in game situation of Malaliaki Smith, and they are going to come calling. So that's the risk you take with playing him. Now, having said that, as a coach, there is no way you can ever justify not playing a kid just so you can hide them. Not playing a kid so you can make their prospects for their future be more limited. That's not your job as a coach. Your job as a coach is to develop a player as best you can and then create a relationship with them to where they want to play for you instead of somebody else. And I know you're going to say, well, that's fine and dandy, but if he's going to be third or fourth string, then everybody's going to choose somewhere else because nobody's going to want to be buried down on the depth chart. That's just too bad. I mean, that's the situation that regardless of what happened, OSU is not going to be able to avoid. So they need to play Malaliaki Smith as much as they feel like they can while keeping him safe. They need to get him the most amount of experience they can, and they need to keep plugging in these young guys like we saw Sese Velahi last night, Josh Ford. We saw R.J. Lester at cornerback, Landon Cleveland at safety. David Kabongo has turned heads at safety. Powasa Utu at linebacker. Jonathan Agamudu at linebacker. Reed DeQuazy at safety. Yamil Talib at linebacker. Jacoby Sanders at offensive line. Cameron Hurd, we saw him have a nice catch last night. Tyke Andrews out of Enid. We also saw him. Those were the freshmen that you saw last night. We need to keep seeing Shota Maida King on the offensive side. That dude is big. Ike Esawani at linebacker. Chance Clements at linebacker. Gabe Brown. Garrick Martin. Landon Dean. We need to keep seeing all those guys. We need to keep seeing all the young guys added. I know Rodney Fields Jr., I heard the rumor that he's not playing because he wants to redshirt, but if somebody can correct me, I've only seen on the participation logs where he's only played 2 games this year. So what that would say is he could play the last 2 games of the year and still redshirt. I could be wrong there, but I've heard that's what I've heard. So if I am wrong, somebody please correct me in the chat. Okay, let's get back to the chat here. PB Shearer 100, yeah, let's fire him after one bad season, loyal and true all the way. Yeah, so let me get back to my conversation on Mike Gundy. Mike Gundy's been the greatest thing ever to happen to Oklahoma State. It is, and it can be true, that he has been the greatest thing ever to happen to Oklahoma State while simultaneously doing a terrible job, which that's the boat I'm in. I love Coach Gundy. I love that he loves Oklahoma State, although I think he squeezed every dime out of OSU. Fine. Hey, make as much money as you can. That's America. That's one of the beauties of the way that we do things here. The harder you work, the better you are at something, then the better of a life you get to make for yourself. The money part of it shouldn't be an issue because everybody should bargain to put themselves in the best situation they can, right? So I think we have 2 things going on simultaneously at once. We have the greatest coach Oklahoma State's ever had doing a simultaneously terrible job with this team. He's done a terrible job building the depth. He's done a terrible job recruiting. He's done a terrible job motivating this team. He's done a terrible job in being creative with the X's and O's to get these kids excited to play. It's just the same thing week after week after week. So as an Oklahoma State fan, it's like, I've said this a couple of times, it's like you're schizophrenic. I want to be as loyal as I can be to Coach Gundy because of the awesomeness that he has brought this program. Awesomeness may be too big of a word, because of the sustained success he's brought this program. But then I want to be pissed as hell, and I don't want this program to fall further behind, because if he is burned out, if he is on cruise control, if all of this season and then the last 3 seasons where we have actually a losing record in conference play dating back to 2022. If that's all because he's getting outworked because other teams are more creative, they're creating a better environment, a funner environment, a more motivating environment for their players. If that's the case, then yeah, we need to be at least starting the conversation of, is he still the right guy? That time always comes. Okay, so PB Shooter 100, I agree with you that, hey, Mike Gundy has definitely throughout the years, he has earned the right to get this thing turned around. But I will say, PB Shooter, that this isn't just one bad year. There's been a dumpster fire happen at Oklahoma State seemingly every other year, dating back to the COVID year. 2022 was a dumpster fire. And if you go back 3 years now, we have a losing record in conference. So this isn't just a one-year deal, in my opinion. This is a 3-year deal. Now, I know last year was good. We made it to the Big 12 championship game, got our asses kicked by Texas. We beat OU. Last year was great. But still, even last year, there were signs of problems that got masked over by the fact that we played a very favorable schedule and we won the close games and then we beat OU. So I do think it's a little bit deeper than just to say this is a one-year deal. Rich Coulter, thank you so much for joining. Really sad to see our beloved Pokes do so bad week after week. I love OSU football, and I find it hard to watch them play so poorly. Gundy is being such a jerk externally. This is the Gundy players see. Is this the Gundy players see? Well, no, I'll tell you what. Okay, and then here's another part of this, is that the schizophrenic brain, you love what Gundy built here, the sustained success. You're very upset with the way this season's gone. You're very worried about the last 3 years, the losing record in conference. And then you get this slap in the face on Monday of Mike Gundy basically telling the fan base to screw off, right? Which, whatever. Hey, I'll say this. I've said this many times before. Coaches are arrogant. Mike Gundy is very arrogant. He's a pompous ass. He always has been, and he doesn't care. Because, I'll tell you this, that arrogance that he carries himself with is also what's made him an undersized, great player in not just football, wrestling, baseball, everything he's done. That confidence / cockiness / yes, arrogance is part of what's made Mike Gundy Mike Gundy. So that arrogance that he carries himself with, the comments he makes in the press conferences that just they just kind of irk you because it's just like, dude, you're so full of yourself. Whatever. That really doesn't bother me. And even the comments that he made Monday towards the fans, that doesn't bother me necessarily as a fan, me particularly, because I could give a rat's ass what he thinks, okay? I've been coming to every single home game since I can remember. I grew up down the street from, if you remember back in the early 80s under Jimmy Johnson, one of the assistant coaches' name was Frank Falks. And Frank Falks was, I believe he is a defensive coach, eventually moved on to USC from Oklahoma State, San Diego State. I think he came to Oklahoma State from San Diego State. And so I got a really inside view of Oklahoma State football at a young age. I got to see the practices. I got to see the inner workings of it. And so I say all that to say that I don't miss games. I mean, I didn't become an Oklahoma State fan. It just happened. I mean, I grew up in Stillwater, and I grew up around the program, around coaches. And Frank had a kid exactly my age, Michael Falks, that we were really, really good friends. Kind of just, ran the streets there of our neighborhood in Stillwater. So I say all that to say Oklahoma State is so diehard and I bleed such orange. There's nothing that will ever drive me away from going to games ever. It's my favorite 3.5 hours of my life, I say that, of my life, other than like my family and all that kind of thing. So I will never stop going. But the comments that Gundy made on Monday, they're so stupid. It would be hard to me. It doesn't bother me personally. Where it bothers me is, as an Oklahoma State fan, in 2 weeks and 13 days, I am going to sit in Boone Pickens Stadium and I'm going to watch Oklahoma State get their asses kicked. Well, I say that with confidence because it's happened. I mean, we're not even competitive right now, right? Texas Tech can score, okay? They have a really good running back. Taj Brooks is really good, okay? Barrett Morton is really good. They have really good receivers, okay? They have really good offense. They are going to score every time they have the ball, unless a miracle happens. And, hey, it could. But we heard Mike Gundy say last night they're not even going to practice this week. So I just – there's no reason for an Oklahoma State fan to think anything other than you're going to go in 13 days and watch OSU just completely get its ass kicked, okay? All right? So I'm going to go to Boone Pickens Stadium. I'm going to watch Oklahoma State get its ass kicked, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to be sitting with about 30,000 fans. That's what's getting ready to happen in 13 days, okay? And, yes, part of that is the shitty football that OSU is playing this year. Yes, part of that is the uninspiring brand of just motivation that Mike Gundy has brought. Hey, I don't disagree with Mike Gundy that keeping your cool, keeping a level head does help you actually think through crisis moments. So I don't have a problem with that as an overall rule. But where I have a problem with it is that everything needs to be used in moderation, because there are times to where things are slipping away that somebody needs to lose their freaking mind. They need to throw a helmet. They need to start hollering and screaming. They need to get in people's faces, and they need to make it uncomfortable for people. I'm not saying it needs to happen very often, because that only works every so often. Only so often will somebody yell at you before you really turn off and go, you know what, screw you, I ain't listening to that crap, right? So it has to be strategic, and it has to be every so often, okay? But there are times to where a coach needs to do that to his team. There are times where a coach needs to do that to an individual player. There are times where an individual player needs to do it to another individual player. So the stoic, keep your cool, don't get frustrated, keep a calm mind. I think overall that's a good philosophy, but I think he's missed the beat this year in the sense that it's actually removed a large amount of edge out of these kids, because when things started going sideways, I think they wanted to see that somebody was so upset about it that they're losing their mind. I think kids want to see that from time to time, and they didn't see that this year. So I'm telling a long story here to get to what I'm getting ready to experience as an Oklahoma State fan of 51 years, as an Oklahoma State fan that watched Oklahoma State not beat TCU at home in 1991, not all the moments that we've had, Chris Rockins, the Ice Bowl, the drop pass in '88, all of the disappointments, right? Okay, the tied game in '02, the pass to Marcellus Rivers in 2000. I did not see. I was 3 years old when we beat OU in '76. I don't remember that game, so I did not see Oklahoma State beat OU with my own eyes until I was 24 years old. 24 years old, okay? So I'm saying that to say, don't ever accuse me of not being loyal and true. Don't ever accuse me of panicking. Don't ever accuse me of wanting to jump ship as soon as things get difficult. That's the part of the comments that I think have Oklahoma State fans so upset as far as the meat and potatoes of it. And then I think the other aspect of it is, you mean we have a head coach that is so entitled that they can go 0-7 and play this shitty of a brand of football and think that he's still entitled enough to be able to go out and make that comment and then come back out with an apology that wasn't done. So like Coach Rainwater mentioned the other day, that whenever you make a mistake, you need to make that same apology in the same arena. Well, the Twitter apology didn't sit very well with Oklahoma State fans. So I say all that, I'm getting long-winded to get back to my original comment that, okay, when I go to Stillwater to Boone Pickens Stadium in 13 days, I'm going to watch Oklahoma State get their ass kicked in front of 30,000 people, and it's going to feel just like 1991. That's probably the thing that is really the most disappointing to me, upsetting to me, and I think some of that can be remedied by Coach Gundy between now and November 23rd. I think that's the date that we play Texas Tech. coming out and reconnecting with the fans. Here's what I would say, okay? I'm going to be there. You don't need to reconnect with me. I don't give a shit about you, okay? I give a shit about Oklahoma State football. I give a shit about us not returning to those days. I don't care who the coach is, right? Okay? I've loved Coach Gundy and that he's created sustained success, but if he's not the guy, it's business. Hey, I love Coach Gundy, but I love Oklahoma State more, right? Okay? So that's not the part of it. He needs to reconnect with all the fans that didn't grow up in Stillwater, with all the fans that have invested hundreds, if not thousands of dollars each year, maybe each Saturday, to come and support a program that, because they are so upset with the way this year has gone, and now because they are so upset with their head coach and the entitlement that he showed, they're not going to come. So I thought we were out of those woods. I thought Oklahoma State would get 45, 50,000 people at every home game from here on out, and we would be competitive enough every year to warrant that type of crowd. Obviously, we're not. So my plea with Coach Gundy between now and then would be get on the mic, get on the TV, get on whatever it is that you need to do to reach as many people as you can and reconnect with Oklahoma State fans. Give them a sincere apology and give them the Mike Gundy that Oklahoma State fans love that will make them want to come to the game on Saturday. And the reason why you need to do that is because Brennan Presley is a stud. Brennan Presley is the all-time receptions leader at Oklahoma State. Brennan Presley just entered a club with Barry Sanders, Thurman Thomas, and Terry Miller of having 5,000-plus all-purpose yards. That dude deserves every fan in the stands that you can possibly get. And if there is one fan that doesn't come to Boone Pickens Stadium because Mike Gundy's ego will not allow him to apologize properly, if there's one fan that doesn't come to pay their respects to Brennan Presley because Mike Gundy won't swallow his pride and properly apologize, because he at that point is putting himself above the kids, shame on you for doing that. So for no other reason, Coach Gundy needs to come out and reconnect with the Oklahoma State fan base so he can put the kids in front of himself and make sure that they have the most amount of people that we can possibly put in the stands on November 23rd to properly honor Brennan Presley and an entire senior class that by and large has done good work at Oklahoma State. They have worked hard. They've spent a lot of time here, and they deserve fans in the stands. They damn sure don't deserve the head coach driving fans away because of his own ego. That's what I'll say to that. Before we get back into, we have a wonderful crowd logging in. I can't thank you guys enough for coming on to these live shows. I'm going to try to do a live show every Sunday right in front of my Dodgers show. So thank you so much for joining PB Shooter. One could think that Wade Gundy is acting in the pressers is a desire not to throw players and coaches under the bus. Bottom line, there's a good chance that he isn't saying what he really thinks. Yeah, PB Shooter, and there's also a thought out there. If he gets fired, it's a $25 million buyout versus just quitting, right? So some have hinted that maybe he wants to get fired to get the buyout, and there he can go fishing forever, right? Rich Coulter, imagine not saying fire Gundy, but something seems to have changed in his demeanor. He needs to do something to change the trajectory of this season. Rich, he's not going to change the trajectory of this season, but he does have the ability to change the trajectory of the fans' outlook in it. If he would just come out and sincerely say, hey, guys, this season caught me by surprise. He has said, I've never been through this before, and I really like that comment. Hey, it sucks. This sucks as bad for me as it does for you. I promise you, we're going to do everything we can to bring in different players and do everything we can. I need you to hang in with me. We need to continue to do this together. I think if that was the togetherness message that he was bringing, I think he could change the trajectory of the fans' outlook and maybe make it a little bit more positive. Not going to change the outlook of this season. But I do think he could change the fans' outlook on next year, which matters because you got to continue to pony up the NIL. You got to continue to have fans that buy season tickets. And if you don't have that, then you don't have a program. You do have a program that will return to the 90s. Hey, PB Shooter 100, agree, Rich, something needs to change. Yes, as a fan, I'm not smart enough to know what that is, so I'm holding whoever the coaches are next year to fix things. That is a good way to look at it. Chief, he has earned the right. Okay, I'll take that argument. What is he doing right now that is showing you he is going to fix it? Which direction is he trending currently while we are watching? I'll say this. They're playing all the young guys. I'll say this again. Okay? Here's all the freshmen that played. Sessi Valahe, Josh Ford, Smith, R.J. Lester, Landon Cleveland, David Kabongo, Powasa Utu, Jonathan Agamadu, Reed DeQuazy, Yamil Talib, Jacoby Sanders, Cameron Hurd, Tyke Andrews. Those are all the freshmen that played last night. Sophomores, Ayo Shatamade King, Ike Esenwane, Chance Clements, Gabe Brown, Garrick Martin, Landon Dean. All matter of fact, it's all in total, I think it's 13 freshmen, 6 sophomores. So that would be my answer to that. Beyond that, I don't think there is anything he can do. He just personnel-wise, defensively, they don't even have enough depth to practice. The only thing he can do is to fix what's happened this year. Create more depth on defense so you can have better, more physical practices. Get you a running back that has a little bit more wiggle or more top-end speed. Find your receiver that can high point the ball to win the jump balls on the fade patterns. And then find a receiver that's really good at blowing the top off on those deep digs. So I don't really think there is anything. I agree with what you're saying. It's uninspired football. It looks like the same thing every week. To his defense, I will say I don't think I've come to the conclusion that this group just doesn't have the physical skills to do anything about this year. We're just going to have to take it. We're going to have to wear it. And then in the offseason, fix it to the best ability that you possibly can. Thank you so much for joining, Chief. You always leave just awesome comments. PB Shooter, I think he is letting his coordinators do their jobs and will decide on what happens next year coaching-wise based on this year's result. I would disagree with that. I think he's interjected on the defensive side of the ball, and I think it's been to the detriment of the entire organization. And I don't think that's me speaking out of line because you can just see the changes that were made, and it's widely reported that not everybody was on the same page of hiring Brian Nardo, and so I think you have a room divided. And then I think it was not Brian Nardo's decision to move back to the 4-2-5, and so I think from that perspective, you can trace that directly back to Mike Gundy. PB Shooter agree he needs to be given a chance if he wants it. Benito Ortiz, I'd change running backs as well. Rich Coulter, Gundy can do this. I still have faith in him. He needs to change his attitude. Totally agree. We just had that conversation. I know losing sucks. He can't go on criticizing fans. 1,000%. It needs to be the opposite. We need to support the Pokes, win or lose. I agree with that. I will do that. I'm not trying to preach. I'm not trying to get up on an ivory tower. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. I'm going to always go to the games. And it's not necessarily to support anybody. It's because I just love going to the games. Whether we win or lose, regardless, I love those games. And so I will keep going. Hey, Benito Ortiz, a good quarterback changes the whole team. Yes, because it changes all the different things you can do. Rich Coulter, Casey, thanks for being here for us. I do miss your play-by-play analysis that you did last year. Please do that again. Yeah, I will do that again. It's just there's just nothing to analyze. I mean, if you looked at our defense, it would be, well, he missed that tackle. Well, he missed that tackle. Well, we ran inside zone. Well, I did a few of them it's just monotony at this point. It's the same thing over and over. So I decided not to do them. They are a lot of work to do, and it's not worth it when things are as basic and the same every week. It would end up being me saying the same things over and over. So I appreciate that. I will get back to whenever it becomes to have a little bit more variety and a little bit more to chew on, to evaluate and break down as we watch the games. Cody Pritchard, Bowman is not a good quarterback. The type of offense Casey Dunn runs, like RPO, only works with a mobile quarterback like Spencer Sanders. It's not an offense for him at all. I think a Mason Rudolph can make it work. I think more so than a mobile quarterback, I think if you had a running back to make people miss and or that could bust through a hole and outrun the defense and create chunk plays, if you had a chunk play receiver and a jump ball receiver, I think this offense can perform at a very high rate without a mobile quarterback. Now, if you don't have those elements, right, then it has to have a mobile quarterback. You have to one of the two. You either have to have the elements around the non-mobile quarterback that this offense needs, but if you don't have those elements, then you need the mobile quarterback to be able to make plays on their own. One or the other. Austin Powers, I want to hear the story on Zane. LOL, yeah. I think you'll probably hear it eventually. But again, that's not my place to come out with. The one, hopefully Bowman gets an 8th year. Yeah. Trader 2 Black, what happened to Rodney Fields? What I've heard is that he's wanting to redshirt, but when I went back and looked like 3 or 4 times, and I can only see him participating in the Baylor and BYU games, which is 2 games, which means he would have 2 more games to play before losing his red shirt. So 2 out of the last 3 games, I'm guessing maybe they chose the TCU game not to play in, and so hopefully he'll play in the last 2. But if anybody can correct me on that, the way that what I have heard is that he is redshirting and doesn't want to burn his red shirt playing. But again, I've only found 2 games that he has played in this year. Alicia Goose, well said. Thank you so much. Hey, Coach, I'm going to need more than 30 minutes this week. Yes, Rusty Berger will definitely be there for senior night. This group of seniors deserve a fantastic send-off. I will too, Rusty. I'm not going to tell anybody what to do. I'm not going to try to shame anybody for not being there. I'm not going to look down on you if you're not there. I understand if you feel like the only message you can send Chad Weiberg, Dr. Schrum, Mike Gundy is by not being there. I understand that narrative. I'll say this. I've been knowing the Weibergs going all the way back to the dad being the basketball coach at Tonkawa. Knew them personally, okay? And I can tell you Chad Weiberg loves OSU. He is not being affected by this shitty football just in the way it's affecting his job. He is being affected by this shitty football by also being an Oklahoma State fan just like we are, okay? They're stuck with a 5-year rollover, meaning every year the contract rolls over and becomes another 5-year contract. And there's a debate to whether that can be changed or not. There's some people out there that would say that legally that contract can never be amended, meaning we have to continue to roll over one more year and make it a rolling 5-year contract every single year, and there's nothing we can do to get out of that, which means every year he gets a $125,000 raise or whatever it is. Every year it gets $125,000 more expensive to buy him out. You would have to buy him out off of 5 years at $8 million. That's around $40 million, which we all know buyouts are usually negotiated down. So $30 million? So is there a coach out there? This is my question for Oklahoma State fans. Is there a coach out there that is $30 million better than Mike Gundy? Because that's what it's going to take to go get another coach. Is there a coach out there that is worth spending $30 million to bring into Oklahoma State? That will come to Oklahoma State and actually have a $30 million better opportunity of getting this program back to where we all want it to be, better than Mike Gundy. $30 million. That's roughly what it's going to take. Is there a coach out there that's worth $30 million better than Mike Gundy? My opinion would be no. I just think Mike Gundy has deserved the right to quite frankly, get his shit together and get things figured out, figure out how the NIL and transfer portal is going to work for Oklahoma State and get us back on track, right? Okay. Hey, PB Shooter 100. Well, if Gundy is interjecting himself, I can't see how he can justify firing coordinators if he is preventing them from doing their jobs. In that case, Gundy is more at fault. I agree. And I think that's happening, which adds elements of difficulty to, which is, I think, also why you see him protect his coordinators to such a large degree. They don't even get to speak to the media. And hey, I understand firing coordinators in midseason. I understand, people are going, well, we might have got Dana Holgerson or whatever, okay? But in the long run, it's a terrible thing to do. And I'll say this, okay? If you become a head coach that has a reputation of firing coordinators to save your job, if you are a head coach that has a reputation of removing coordinators on the tip of a hat to remove pressure off of your ass, you're not going to get good coordinators to work for you. The only way an Oklahoma State type place is going to get coordinators that will want to come here and work is if they feel like the head coach is going to have their back and the university is going to have their back. So the university has their back by signing them to 2-year contracts. Mike Gundy has their back by giving them the respect to letting them finish the season. At that point, it can be a mutual agreement that, hey, things just didn't work. Brian Nardo is a tremendous young coach. He just didn't have the type of defense that we wanted here at Oklahoma State. But for whoever wants a really intelligent, odd stack, 33-5 defensive coach, he's your guy. That's just not what we wanted. How many times have you seen coaches be in the wrong fit and not succeed, and then go to the right fit and become an entirely different coach and become much greater? You can make that argument for your assistants in the offseason that, hey, they are great coaches. They just weren't a fit for what we needed at Oklahoma State right now. If you fire them so they get to save their career, okay, that makes it much more attractive for any other assistant coach worth their salt to want to come to Oklahoma State. If you start firing assistants in the middle of the season, you are not going to have any assistants want to come work at Oklahoma State. Period. End of discussion. So for that fact alone, it is not a smart move for Oklahoma State to fire the coordinators unless there is something that was done that is unethical. If it's just results on the field, it's better if Coach Gundy just take the play calling over, let all of the assistants take over, and try to finish the season with all the wealth of knowledge of all the other coaches. See, I think the bigger issue here that people aren't thinking about, yes, Brian Nardo, the defense is terrible. But what's happened is Mike Gundy's gotten more involved on the defense. All the other coaches around it have gotten more involved on the defense as far as the game plan, structuring, the play calls, and all of that. So the fact that the defense hasn't gotten any better is every bit of an indictment on all of the other defensive coaches who, if they haven't played a bigger role with all their experience with this downhill slide, I would have to question that the head coach's thinking, because it's the head coach's job if something's not working to fix it, right? So you would have to think that the head coach and all the other more experienced assistants would step in and help more when things aren't working. So the fact that nothing's getting any better, to me, is as big of an indictment on them as it is Brian Nardo. Hey, wow, that contract puts us in a bad place. No doubt, PB Shooter. It absolutely does. Congratulations to Mike Gundy for negotiating that. That was absolutely brilliant on his part. Mike Wright, we need to get better offensive and defensive lines. Don't get a scrap in quarterback in the portal. I would not disagree with that, but I would say this offensive line has shown that they can function and create a good offense with the right personnel around it and with a good scheme that is called for. We saw that at BYU. James Sanders, do you think we will get rid of Casey Dunn after this season? Boy, that's an enigma. I think probably, but I don't necessarily think it'll be 100% Mike Gundy's decision. I think if you remove both coordinators, man, that is a lot of change. That's a lot of change, and I've never known Mike Gundy to want that kind of change. He likes continuity, so it'll be very difficult. Hey, PB Shooter, I will say this, a great live stream. Other YouTube and podcasts tend to just rag on Gundy, which is not going to fix anything. I would agree. Hey, I criticize Mike Gundy. I may have been one of the guys he's talking about as far as the people that bitch and moan. That's fine. I'm a big boy. I've had my own career. Okay, that has been very successful. Okay, I've done all that, right? Okay, so I could give a shit what he thinks about OState Daily, or I would rather he like it. I misspeak there. I would rather he like the content here. I would hope that he has to understand that I can't just be sunshines and rainbows, and that I have to give my opinion when I think something is not correct. I have to put Oklahoma State above Mike Gundy. I have to do that. Otherwise, I don't have a legitimate site here, right? So if he doesn't understand that and he wants me to be, or any other site like this, just to never criticize, never focus on any of the problems, and only highlight all the good stuff, then at that point, I can't care what he thinks, because that's absolutely not realistic. Hey, Jerry Wood, sorry, Florida State and Oklahoma are the other big-time programs are wrong when they fired their assistants. Yes. Yeah, but those are programs that have a lot more clout than Oklahoma State. I mean, say what you want. OU's a blue blood. They got an SEC. They got an SEC bid, right? Okay. Plus, I don't think their head. Put it this way, okay. I think that's in preparation of their head coach not being there. He is doing that to save his job. I think Oklahoma fans at this point have every intention of Brent Venables not being their head coach for the long-term future. That's what you're making. Usually you're firing your assistants is just simply a precursor to firing your head coach. Florida State, Mike Norvell, they had a better season than Oklahoma State did last year, right? They have better clout than Oklahoma State. I would be shocked that, let's say that, the SEC and Big Ten, they separate. I would be shocked if Clemson and Florida State aren't a part of that separation, right? That's the kind of clout that they have. They played for national titles. They have a much bigger brand, better brand than Oklahoma State. So, having said that, assistants are going to feel like it's more of a transactional. We don't have the clout. We don't have the history of winning championships to hire transactional coaches, meaning coaches are coming here to win a national championship and then go do whatever. I think an offensive or defensive coordinator would feel like they could go to Florida State, they could take all that talent, they could win the ACC, they could parlay that a lot faster than, say, in Oklahoma State, where you have to come and deal with a 20-year head coach, Mike Gundy, that is going to have heavy opinions on everything you do. But I could be wrong. That's just my opinion. Hey, trade to Black, $30 million better than Gundy. Let's go for Jimbo Fisher. Yeah, I'm the same. I don't care what Gundy says. I just want to see results. No doubt about it. So Oklahoma State, not in a good position. I wanted to also say this, okay? Parker Robertson. This Oklahoma State defense is terrible. It is maybe the worst defense in the United States of America. I'm not being negative when I say that. I'm not bitching and moaning when I say that. I am stating a fact, okay? This defense is terrible. That's not my opinion. But having said that, Parker Robertson is above criticism for me. That dude plays for the front, the name on the front of the jersey. That dude plays for the brand. That dude has absolutely earned my respect at every single turn. I mentioned last week how I will never criticize Nick Martin. Whatever limitations Parker Robertson may have, I will never criticize that dude because he absolutely gives it his all. I find it even in this day and age where kids get paid, I still find it very difficult to criticize a college athlete, even though they're getting paid, when they are playing for my brand that I love and they are giving everything they got. When I can tell that they are playing for the brand and they are playing and not worried about their body, they are playing as hard as they can, I will never, I don't think I could ever criticize. Now, I could say I wish they had made a better play here. I don't think that's criticism. I think that's analysis. There is a difference between analysis and criticism. But I don't think I could criticize a Parker Robertson ever from that aspect, like a lot of people have done Kendall Daniels, where I think in certain situations, he's earned that. Now, I think Kendall Daniels is a good kid. I think he has a lot of potential. I think he will have a chance to go to the combine and make himself an NFL player. And I think he'll have a chance to make himself a good ambassador of Oklahoma State University. But I say that to say, on the opposite end of that, Parker Robertson, I totally agree, James Sanders. He is a dog, and because of that, I will never criticize him. I wanted to mention that and get to that. Also, just kind of cycling back to the beginning, out of the frustrated stage, out of the mad stage, into the acceptance stage that this program has a lot bigger issues than, like at the beginning, it's like, well, if we called a better play on fourth down, yeah, it goes from that to, well, if we called a better game overall, it goes to that, to, yeah, we could have called better offense and defense, but I just think this team's not very good. I just don't think the depth is good. I don't think the foot speed is up to speed to play a team like TCU. It's resignation that really, when you peel back all the layers, what this is bad recruiting. Yes, the coaching could be better. All of that. But bottom line is Oklahoma State has to go get better players. And yes, I think Corey Black's a great player. I think, Nick Martin's a great player. I think Trey Rucker's a great player. I think Colin Oliver's a great player. I think Ollie Gordon, I think he could be better than what he is right now, but he's a great player. I think a receiver, Brendan Presley's a great player. But the guys behind them need to get better. You need to develop better quality depth. Now, how do you do that? In today's day and age, the only way you do that is you keep showing up, you keep putting money into the NIL coffers, and you keep giving whatever coach it is coaching for Oklahoma State an equal opportunity to put a roster full of depth that will match all of his competition. That's really the only thing you can do. So that's kind of where I'm at with this Oklahoma State team at this point. Hey, and then also the Malalake Smith, we'll see how that works. It is what I've been wondering is our main problem is just talent. Yeah, and depth, and absolutely depth. So, hey, what would you do after the season if you ran this program? Jerry Wood, the first thing I would do is I would get all of my depth. I would go get 25 to 30 Trent Howlands. And they wouldn't become my best players, right? But they would become my depth. So whenever you lose a say a Nick Martin or a Colin Oliver, you have a Trent Howland caliber backup to replace them. And then maybe Obi Ezigbo is a third string guy instead of your starter with no depth behind him. So I think the one thing before you fire coordinators, that's the easy fix. That's not going to solve the Oklahoma State's problems. They're way bigger than that, okay? You go out and you create depth through the transfer portal, and then what you do, in my opinion, is you figure out the quarterback that can make this offense dynamic again, and you create a program that gets back to its roots. You want to know what its roots are? My opinion, underneath Mike Gundy, score the ball. Create an offense that can outscore the other team and force the other team to play a game that they don't want to play because they are trying to keep up with our offense. Find a receiver that can take the top off the defense. Find a receiver that can win a jump ball. Find a running back that can make people miss, the Dantrell Savage of the world. And then also find a running back that can run a 4-3 and create chunk plays in the running game. Find those metrics. That's what I would, and then build your depth out of the transfer portal, and then figure out what you want to do on defense and build depth there through the transfer portal. That is exactly the approach that I would take. James Sanders, I truly believe that if Bowman would have never been granted this extra year, our record would be a fair bit better than it is now we would have not lost all of our conference games if Rangel played. Can't argue with you there. Can't disagree with you there. Can't argue with you there. So, hey, that brings us to about 7:20. I think I'm going to end the show right there. This has been just simply a wonderful, wonderful crowd. Hey, again, we're going to start. We've been going over an hour now. We're going to start doing these live shows every Sunday night. So that's as long as I have time. Just if you want to join, mark it down Sunday night. Let's have a good time talking Oklahoma State football, basketball, girls basketball, wrestling, all of that. So, hey, I want to thank everybody for tuning in.